ANC currently has an acting Secretary General who also is the TG of the ANC, but no Deputy Secretary General, and he takes up that position as well. That's, of course, after Jesse Duarte passed away over the weekend. Duarte took over that position following the suspension of Ace Magashule. Yesterday, SACP leader Mfundo Mabalane likened the ANC to plane operating on autopilot, a plane operating on autopilot. To unpack this crisis in the ANC, political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe joins us now. Professor, thank you very much for your time. In fact, I think in that introduction there was something that was a bit incorrect in terms of the fact that it's the Treasurer General who basically took up the position of the Secretary General after Ace Magashule was suspended. And now this means Paul Mashatile has to take over the entire reins of the administration of the ANC from Luthuli House. Is he able to do this? Do you see him actually pulling through? We saw it not being able to even pay people's salaries at some point.
Yeah, not only was there a failure at that level of paying people's salaries, which in itself it was an insult to the workers. And it's still surprising that this is something that the unions have not taken very strongly, that how can you have a party that claims to be a party in government that it got into power through the support of the unions, and it's the first party to undermine even the most basic rights of making sure that they adhere to the Labour Relations Act that they themselves had worked hard to make sure that it becomes the law of this country. So that is the first thing. But there's also a challenge of the ANC to the House. It must be seen to be a neutral body, a party that serves as a platform where members of the ANC, when they have grievances, will go. So in Jesse Duarte and in the probably largely more to her, the people found her to be less a factionalist. So effectively, they were assured that when they go there, they might actually have a hearing. But right now, we know that the ANC is almost driven by divisions. And Mashatile's posture is very clear of somebody who belongs to a particular faction. At the moment, it will appear that the whole notion of the Luthuli House is now left with one particular faction, and that creates a problem. So you have the failures that takes place from the Treasurer General's office itself. Now you have him being given also the responsibility of running the entire machinery. But we've seen that the denuding of capacity within the office of the Secretary General of the ANC has led to a total failure to prepare even for local elections. So you can imagine that things are going to be worse. But most importantly, it is really, you need a figure that is seen not to be aligned to any faction. You need a figure that you unite the organization. So the organization is now going to be in far deeper crisis because people on the ground, especially members of the branches, they can actually see through what is happening. But you also have that office, the Secretary General's office, is the office that must force accountability, especially in terms of the resolutions of the ANC. And we know that the only people who were pushing for that was the former or the suspended Secretary General of the ANC, as well as Jesse Duarte. Those are the people who are going to be concerned about that. So you have now a collective that is not seen as a merit to the line of march that was given by the conference. So that itself creates a crisis. But the ANC is anyway in a crisis, not only within the Luthuli House, it's in a crisis also within government.
And, you know, Professor Seepe, you talk about the fact that, the Secretary General's office was not able to basically plan adequately for the November elections, even though they'll say that they found out late. We all knew that elections would take place last year. So you say that there was already trouble there, and now the trouble will be worse because Paul Mashatile is shown to be from a particular faction, which goes against their unifying tactics or their unifying, what they're trying to achieve in terms of unifying. So will this be a problem in December? Of course, we know that whoever's elected in December only comes in about 2 years' time after that. So this is going to be a long time of possible mess-ups then at Luthuli House.
Well, at the moment, the ANC has to deal with the fact that the president of the ANC is in himself a political quagmire, both within the party itself, but also in government. The ANC has not been able to fashion a message in terms of how do you deal with the particular crisis where their own president is found wanting in terms of the very agenda that they had set themselves to deal with. I mean, the president of the ANC has come out as somebody who's going to be fighting corruption, somebody who is a champion of transparency. But we've seen him do the exact opposite. Now there are suggestions that he might also have been involved in defeating the ends of justice, and that he might also be involved in some form of criminality. So how do you go and try to convince the people on the ground as a party to say we are against corruption when the president of the party himself is embroiled in these shenanigans? And also you need to also understand that this comes at a time when the president of the ANC is being booed by not only workers, but at the township level, because it is the townships, not the people in the suburbs, who are going to give the ANC a lot of political support, because the ANC within those communities, it brings a historical, social and political capital. But when that social and political capital is squashed, then you are going to have a crisis. Then you have the incapacity at the level of government of the party, in a sense that it doesn't have the people who can speak strongly to say we are elected. Being acting and being is simply an imposition of people who have not been elected into positions, and that does not carry often a lot of weight.
Yes, and very quickly, Professor, you know, looking at Jessie Duarte herself, because we also called you in terms of that topic as well. She used to be a person who used to speak out for the ANC, you know, so obviously the party will miss her, although South Africans were very deaf to that tone from Duarte because of all the news that's been happening around the party. But when you look at the fact that they've called her a unifying leader, a unifier, would you say that worked, looking at what's happening in ANC KZN, for instance, with 5 slates being being spoken about? This unifying, is it really happening? Were they listening to their own leader?
No, I don't think it was happening. But what can be said about Jessie Duarte is that at least she was never, or very few people would have accused her of being factionist. What we know is that she was feisty, she was principled, and she could speak with authority. And part of that has more to do with her own background. This is a woman who cut her political teeth in the trade union movement, in the non-NGO sector. And also she had a stint in parliament, actually in government. So she was an all-rounder. But one thing that you could count on her is that she would speak, she was a straight shooter, whether she was dealing with the media, whether she was dealing with the alliance partners, or whether she was dealing with her own members in the party.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time here on All Angles and on eNCA. That was Professor Sipho Seepe giving us some political analysis around the ANC and the passing on of its DSG, Jessie Duarte. All right. Let's take you to a short